Hello, I'm Bruce Zimmerman, and this is the Open Line Garden Show podcast for this week. Now, believe it or not, once we've got the whole Let's Party time season over, it's time to consider planting our gardens. And now, when I say planning, I don't mean planting, I mean planning. And planning is for the vegetables and flowers. Now, a lot of people will seed their own. Others will buy what they can get at the local garden center. So it's a matter of which way you want to go and what suits you best. Very often at this time of year, some garden centers will start to bring in their racks of seed. And this seed will be, of course, Canada #1 seeds. You don't have to worry about that. They can't sell anything but Canada #1 seed. And you're going to get the best selection now. A lot of detailers will not restock from the original stock that they ship into your local garden center. Result is that when it gets sold out, it's gone, and they just move the seed up the racks and rearrange it so that it looks full. And this goes on all the time, so it's something you should be aware of. So for selection, it is much better if you're well prepared and you are extra early. This will give you the selection of seed that's available in these racks. And usually this is different than what you'll find in a lot of your local garden centers. So very often it's worthwhile taking a look because there are varieties there that you may want to try. And often it's the newest varieties that are there simply because they can get the dollar value for the seed. So go and take a look and see and do it very soon, probably in January. It depends when you do this, when they arrive in your garden center. So you may have to keep checking and going back and checking, or you can ask and see if they have an expected delivery date as well. A lot of garden centers that I used to run would always have them ready by about the third week of January. They needed to have the full racks out, all the seeds, and all the selection, including the bigger bulk packages as well. If you're going to do a lot of bigger bulk packages, be aware that you're going to need some serious space because a lot of them do need to be planted, let's say 6-8 inches apart, and you're going to be getting a box of 200 or 300 seed. So it could be quite a bit. If you're going to have to store those extra seeds from one year to the next, a good sealed container. Now this should be airtight. It should be kept at about 70 degrees Fahrenheit. And very often what they do is they put a little package of silica gel in the box to absorb any extra moisture. Doesn't always work, but in most cases it's good. So if you don't have the silica gel, fine, but try and get an airtight container that you can put somewhere where it's going to be about 70 degrees day and night. Now, you're probably going to have to choose where you're going to be planting these different seeds. And the seeds can be for shade or for sun, but in most cases it's for the sun. And that means you're going to need 6+ hours a day. The longer the day length, very often flowers will bloom sooner. So look at it this way. When you're seeding, you're going to be running your lights about 14 hours a day. This is to ensure long day and short night. And by doing that, you're going to get better growth, thicker plants, and that's important. You want good, strong plants to go out into your garden. I know the time has gone and passed for many people for the preparing of soil. But I'm going to do it because if you didn't do it in the fall, let's say you got busy, you got caught out, suddenly you got a hard frost, a lot of snow, and you didn't get your garden prepared for next year, that's fine. Usually what happens in the fall, we just go and we dig it up and we leave it rough. And that, means a rough dig. This allows snow and frost to work on the soil and helps to break it down into a finer soil. Often we're dealing with clay or larger moisture content, which freezes and, of course, cracks open. That's how soil is made, from rock to being good soil, other than adding organic matter as well. And you do need to do that. And if in the fall you could dig in clean, non-diseased tree leaves, but that have been shredded. Now, I say that not that they should be shredded, and the reason is that a shredded leaf has more exposed edges and rots down quicker. So if you can do that, that's great, which means run them over with the lawnmower. Either bag them or just keep running them over. Empty the bag out, run it over again, until you've got them broken down into about 1-inch size pieces. This I usually find will break down quite quickly into your soil. There are a few things that I would not go and work into a garden in this particular case where you're doing flowers and vegetables. And that would be things like evergreen leaves, the broadleaf evergreen leaves that take much longer to break down. Even if you shred them up, they really, they just dry up as opposed to break down. You can add peat moss in the spring or in the fall. You can add composted cattle manure, sheep manure, cow manure, compost. All of these can be worked into the soil. Now, this can be done every year. Remember that this is the portion of the soil that breaks down the most but does the most work. It's the natural feeding of all the good bacteria and little good animals that are in the soil that are going to release the fertilizer that's from the organic matter and make it available to the plant roots. So it's important that you get lots of organic matter put in to the soil every year. Whether or not you do it spring or fall is up to you or the timing. So do all of that. When it comes to fertilizer, a slow-release fertilizer for a vegetable, which is usually middle and last number is high, first number is low. Exceptions would be things where you're growing the plants for leaves. And just don't overdo it. Remember, soft tissue plants burn, don't taste as well if they're over pushed, and because they don't build up the flavors and the oils and the rich vitamins and minerals that are in them, they have a tendency to be more water orientated and size orientated, and the cellular makeup of these plants are usually just larger to make them look larger. So it's important that you don't overdo it with a fertilizer. You can put it both spring and fall. If you're going to do it in the spring, you need to do all this work, and the fertilizer goes on top, and it gets raked in down into the top 2 to 3 inches. Now, If it's a water soluble, we don't want to overwater it. So, because we don't want extra wet soil, it makes it harder for you to seed. And of course, seed can rot, particularly in wet, cold springs. So don't do that. The other next thing you want to do is you want to get the whole thing going. And that fertilizer can actually go down into the top 8 to 10 inches, depending on the plants that you're planting. So the fertilizer that you normally would rake in should actually be going down deeper and sprinkled in as you're digging your garden row after row after row. And by that I mean you're going to be breaking up the old pathways where the old plants grew. You may want to rotate your crops, and that's always a good idea, so they use different nutrients. And of course, by adding all that good nutrients, fertilizer, and organics, you will find that the plants will do quite well. I usually don't do a lot of cleanup in my whole yard, but in the vegetable and flower gardens where disease can run amok, then yes, it's a very, very good cleanup, and I do want to go and do that as well. And those plants don't go to the compost. They go to the street. Let them go and compost them in the organics, because they reach higher temperatures than your compost does. Don't forget to work the compost in. Don't forget to get everything ready to plant, because there will be things that do get planted very early. So that's why a fall preparation is sometimes better than spring. So just as an example, so you know what I mean, spinach, peas, onions, lettuce, they go in really early as seed. So you may not find that you get as much out of them if you plant late. In that case, you may want to buy some transplants and also seed, so that you can rotate your crops and continue and harvest earlier and later with the greens as well. I'm Bruce Zimmerman, and this has been the Open Line Garden Show podcast for this week.